Welcome to The Next Chapter, a show about how to move your life forward and what comes next. I'm your host, Carey Peña, co-founder of the Center for Positive Media. Hi, everyone. I'm Carey Peña, and this is the Next Chapter podcast. This is a show all about overcoming obstacles and turning the page. I am so excited to have with us in studio my friend, full disclosure, my very good friend, James Kelleher, who therapist, life coach, and now national TV star. So glad to have you here.
You're too kind. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be sitting here with you.
You have an amazing next chapter story. And today we're going to be talking a lot, guys, about how do we get unstuck so we're not afraid to turn the page and to see our next chapter. So you're a dad of 3 children. You were super busy and you sort of put all of your career stuff to the side for a little bit. And I want to just set the stage for the audience to talk about, when did you have that light bulb moment of, it's okay, I got to get back in the game?
Wow. Yeah, it was definitely a light bulb moment. I would say my world has been so consumed with my own private practice as well as being a parent, right?
Yeah.
A full-time parent. And that can come at a cost, right? Because for me, the priority was having family. And I put my all into that. I still put my all into that.
Yeah, of course.
But through that process, I lost a little of myself.
Yes.
Right? Being there so much. I remember even talking to you about going to events in the past and just connecting with friends. And it was always pause for being there. And then it hit me that I need to rediscover who I am. Mm-hmm. I need to kind of reinvent myself in some ways. And I need to really think about my purpose and my journey and not losing myself. How can I have both? So the key point is balance.
Yes.
How can I achieve balance with showing up for my family, my children, being a part of my career, my private practice, and then saying, what's next?
Did you feel like you had to give yourself permission to step back into your career and the things that you had worked so hard for?
I did. And you know what? I felt like I needed to ask my kids for permission as well.
Yeah.
I brought it up to them, and I know it's my own journey, but they're a big part of my journey.
Yeah.
So I said to them, would you guys be okay? There's going to be some shifts. It's going to look different for our schedules, for our time together. And this is important to me, and I want to make sure I have everybody's permission and, we're all on board.
When we talk about the next chapter, and you're a therapist, you're a life coach, and you're also now on, tell folks about the national TV show that you're on, because now you're famous.
Yeah.
So
You're funny. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. So I've recently done a show with TLC Network, and it's called 90 Day Fiancé, The Last Resort. And then there was another show, kind of a spinoff of that, 90 Day Fiancé, Between the Sheets.
yeah.
So
they love you on that show. But it was so you then make yourself more public, and then you step into that space, and you talk about getting unstuck. Like, you really did it all full force, right? And so what has this been like for you, opening yourself up to this next chapter? It's vulnerability.
That's a good word. It's definitely been vulnerability. I've learned about myself personally and professionally. I think the biggest thing is the whole concept of authenticity. That was actually a struggle, and I'm still working on that. But how to show up as your true, authentic self.
Yes.
For me, doing these shows, wanting to be as professional as I can be. There were 2 different shows. So one, showing up and trying to be as laced up and professional. But then the other show, I was saying, you know what? How to be myself. Because while I'm professional, there's a whole other side to me.
Yes.
There's a side to me that talks about coaching and therapy, but there's a side to me that is humor and fun and playful. And I had a friend that said, James, you know what? Show up as your friend. Show up as yourself and act like you're talking to me.
Yes.
And I did just that. And that to me was vulnerability. It was authenticity. It was having fun. There was a transition. There was a shift there for sure.
What was the hardest thing for you about being suddenly on national TV? So here you are, you're in private practice, you're doing life coaching. It's a fairly protected atmosphere.
Absolutely.
You're a dad, you're carpooling because we've been to school functions together. And then suddenly you're on national TV for all the world to see.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy. It's not always pretty. And even for you, you coach folks about, mental toughness, but still that's hard for you.
To be it was. And you make great points, because you don't understand it until you fully walk in those shoes. And for me, it was moments of anxiety. I'm now going from a small, safe space, whether it's in a private office or doing teletherapy, to this is being broadcasted throughout the world. And so many people are watching it. So concerns of, fears and judgments and criticisms. And I had to sit with that. And I had to learn to navigate that. I had to learn to think, how can I get unstuck in some ways?
Yes.
And deal with this and confront.
You have to be willing to accept criticism, in that you just have to be willing, because you are going to, having been on the news for many years, folks have a lot to say, and that I just kind of learned to accept that. Did you learn to accept that? I'm
learning. Yeah. It's interesting because it's almost like the stages of grief. When someone dies, you kind of go through these stages, right? With denial and anger to getting to that acceptance. And I'd almost liken this to that. There was a part of me that was frustrated and angry. Like, I knew I had to prepare myself. I knew people were going to say things. To what extent? That I wasn't sure of. But there was this part of me that was going through frustration, getting to the place of now sitting with acceptance. And I think a big part of that, Carey, is your mindset.
Yes.
And how you want to deal and cope. I often think about like all these mantras and even these silly little memes. Don't let anybody dull your sparkle. Don't let someone steal your shine. And it's so powerful, and you really don't understand it until you're in those moments.
But so often that's easier said than done.
Absolutely.
You read that on Instagram, you're like, I'm all about that. Yeah. And then someone writes you some mean thing, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
Boom, it's gone.
What has been the thing that has been the hardest for you in this next chapter, as you've stepped out into the national spotlight? You're really trying to do a lot for mental wellness for a lot of folks, not just in Arizona, but around the country, around the world. But what has been the hardest for you, the hardest moment, do you think?
I would say some of the most difficult moments would be being on social media. There's two parts to it. On one hand, I feel like it's an amazing platform, and I can reach a broader audience and talk about the stigma of mental health and provide tools and coping. And I love it for just that. There's a lot of amazing things. Unfortunately, the other side of that is the negativity, the hurtful comments, the things that people like to say.
Yeah.
It's been challenging. That piece has been challenging, and learning how to navigate through that, learning how to cope, how to make those memes more than just something funny that you'll read, learning to sit with the frame of mind that you want to be in and how you're going to cope and get yourself through those. Because
the funny thing to me is that even I'm a very like strong-minded person, and then all of a sudden some kind of weird comment will bug you, like, girl. Yeah. What's going on with your eyelashes? Who cares about eyelashes, really? Right? That's like so inconsequential. But then you're like, wow, did my eyelashes really? Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like some of those like really stupid things.
Well, and I've had many of those stupid moments. And the reality is I can laugh at a good majority of them. But when it's one after the other, and they start to kind of snowball, it can weigh on you. And you have to start to think about, how do I want to handle this?
Yeah.
And I almost think of it in kind of, so many different areas of making sure there's self-care, making sure there's limits, making sure there's boundaries, making sure you're in a good mindset to be able to cope with this.
So let's dig into that. So because you gave me a few things that you've done for yourself that I think are beneficial to the audience. So First, you mentioned to me baby steps. So when you say that, what do you mean by that?
This whole idea of how I've been hearing so many people say they're stuck in their worlds, they're stuck in their lives. And I can relate, because I had a moment of feeling stuck for a little while, in my practice, just being a parent, or I laugh and say I'm an Uber driver, right? driving the kids all around. So I was stuck in some ways. So I came up with this idea around baby steps, whether it's feeling stuck in your world or how to navigate social media and bullying. And I need to set baby steps in my life for handling goals and navigating through this process.
Yes, that it doesn't happen just overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight.
So you're going to just go one little bit at a time.
Absolutely.
And see how you feel.
Yeah, here's a good example. When I think of baby steps and, people talking about New Year's resolutions, I always say we get overwhelmed. And because we're overwhelmed, we want to check out. We get anxious. So thinking about a baby step, an example would be, if I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the gym for X amount of hours or lose X amount of pounds. The first baby step would be, I'm going to get that gym membership. The second baby step would be, I'm pulling up to the parking lot and I'm going to just sit there. Another baby step to build on would be, my goal is to get in, do some cardio for 15 minutes. That's it. And then I'm going to leave. These may sound silly or cheesy, but somebody that's overwhelmed and they feel stuck and unmotivated, this builds confidence.
Yeah.
This helps, right, empower somebody to say, yeah, I could get a gym membership.
Yes.
I got this.
Yes. I can get outside. I can walk, whatever it is.
That's right.
Baby step.
A little step.
I love that. And then you also mentioned second on your list that you gave me is what is in our control.
That's right.
So talk about what you mean by that.
Yeah, listening to so many comments and just being on social media, you know, and just life in general, I feel like we have a tendency to consume so many things in our daily lives, and we have to take a step back and realize what is in my control. Right? I'm in control of my own feelings. I may not be able to control the outcome, but I can control my reactions. I read something and I love it. I can't control the weather, but I can control my umbrella.
Yeah. Totally. That's good.
Yeah.
Did you feel at some points when you were, because I know that, and you're fine with this, I know because you talk about it on your podcast, but it hurt you, those social media comments. So did you have to like really think for yourself, how do I control more of my mindset when I'm reading this?
Absolutely. You know, here's the reality, and I tell everybody, all clients included, that it would be perfect if we could be Miss Polly positive. That's not a reality. So I say, let's try to find neutral. What's that neutral space look like?
Yeah.
And for me, that's just what it was. How am I going to sit with these comments? Know my self-worth. I think that's a big piece.
Yeah.
Knowing your value, knowing your self-worth, coupled with having support, right? Having a community, having people like you that have been through this, having people that say, I know you as a bigger picture, not getting caught up, as I like to say, the edit.
Yes.
And I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is this concept of the edit. And
whoa, the situation you're in on national TV is vulnerable because you film, and then you can't control how you're portrayed.
I'd love to think that many people know that, but some people don't. The reality is I've spent so many hours doing therapy sessions and in meetings with people, group therapy, and it may be literally a second or a minute clip that they're getting to see. And that's what people want to judge off of.
So do you read all the social media comments?
Listen, I've learned the hard way.
'Cause that can be.
Yeah, I've set a boundary for myself. In the beginning, I was curious. But then I had to stop and limit myself.
Well, that was third on the list that I have here is, setting boundaries.
Yeah.
So when you say setting boundaries, I mean, that's like a really hot topic. But how do we do that?
Yeah.
You know, how do we know if this is something that is impacting me negatively, I'm going to set a boundary here.
Absolutely. Whether it's yourself, and we're talking about social media, or just in your world, knowing your limits, right? I have no business going on social media. The other thing I like to think about with boundaries is knowing your limits related to kind of a battery level, right? Or how much is in your tank. If I'm below 50%, James, you have no business going on social media and looking at any of this.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because you're depleting the rest of your resources.
Absolutely.
There.
You know, interestingly enough, this came up with Brene Brown, and she would talk with her husband when she came in from work, and she would say something like, what's your energy level? What's your battery? I say battery level, but you know, honey, I only got 20% in me. So she would know, okay, I got to pick up the other 80%.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So to tap into that.
You know,
and then say that my boundary is I have nothing more to give right now.
And then have a game plan. Because what if you both come home from work and you're both sitting at 10%, 20, under 50%, we may not have much to give to ourselves, to the pets, to the children.
Yeah.
So what's our game plan? How are we going to navigate this tonight?
And is it okay that is what it is? Right? Like, because we feel so much guilt all the time of, well, I got to do all these things.
I just got to sit with that and realize, hello, I'm human.
Yeah.
Right? This is real life. This is real stuff we're going through.
And as we finish your list, I want to make sure that the audience knows, like, your big thing is really helping people with their mental mindset to have the best as a life coach and a therapist, but to really put ourselves on a track for the most full life that we can have, the most love that we can have for ourselves and for those around us. I know that those things are really important to you. And then you talk about self-care. Self-care. define that. That's another hot topic. But when you say
Absolutely.
self-care, what do you mean by that?
I always tell people self-care can come in so many forms, right? It could be something like just taking a moment for yourself and going into a warm or cold shower with some nice smelling soaps and shampoos and taking some breaths and allowing yourself just to have that time, to something as far as, making sure you're getting in exercise and proper diet and nutrition, massages, getting your hair done, whatever it is, something that's going to make you feel good, special, but also be able to recharge your battery.
Yes. How has all of this, you stepped into something, you made a decision like, yes, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to take a risk in this next chapter. How has this impacted your life?
The big picture for me, I'm honored, I'm thankful, I'm appreciative of the experience. It allowed me to kind of just see and experience so many different spaces. And more importantly, my own journey has been connecting with people.
Yeah.
So that's been so powerful. Bigger than that, I think just allowing me to have a platform now. Here, I was on Facebook, posting pictures of my kids. That's all I did.
You were one of those, huh?
I was one of those. Well,
I know, because I always look at the pictures because your kids are adorable.
Thank you. But that's all it was. My point was it was very limited. I didn't do Instagram and TikToks and LinkedIn.
That's what I'm saying. This is a big leap for you.
It was a huge leap. It was me and my small little world. And so I'm thankful now that I'm learning. I'm growing personally and professionally, what it's like to navigate social media, what it's like to try to do a podcast platform. And through those experiences, for me, the biggest thing is the mission. And the mission, as you were saying, is to kind of just put out there what kindness is, to put out there what mental health is, to break the stigma that unfortunately is still there around mental health. You
must feel, though, on days where, gosh, what have I done? Sometimes don't you feel like, what have I done? I was in my own nice little world. Yeah. You're stepping in to try to do something bigger.
Yeah.
But then in the midst of all of it, you probably get a message here or there that's, wow, thank you for helping me. And to me, whenever I get that message, it's like, all of this is worth it.
Yes.
All of this is worth it because I put myself out there all the time.
Yes.
And there are days where I'm like, gosh, Care, how much more do you want to try to do? And something is pulling me to keep going. And I get those messages from someone who was like, I was suicidal and I saw a show you did. Yes. Or I didn't know how to navigate this with my children. I saw a show you did. And then I'm like, I'm doing the right thing.
And that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Right? Because it can be draining. And there's so many parts of our world, but to get that, not just positive reinforcement, something that just kind of, I think, lights that fire, that passion in you, that this is what it's about. And if I can reach one person out of thousands, to me, that's rewarding. That's successful.
What would you say to the audience as we close out here about not being afraid to step in and at least examine your next chapter? Because everybody has one.
Absolutely. So important. I think the biggest takeaway for me is to sit and to be able to feel empowerment. If you can feel that empowerment and that level of self-awareness, to me, that's growth right there. And being able to take a step back and say, where am I at this stage in my life? What's important to me? And even ask yourself at this stage in your life, what is your purpose? That's huge. And just having that awareness alone, I think it leaps and bounds. It's, I wish everybody could know and just sit with that.
I actually think that question alone, if people sat on that and just sat for a second and said, what is my purpose? What do I want to do?
Absolutely.
What do I want to accomplish?
Absolutely.
That question can really help fuel us to new heights.
That could be a follow-up.
It's a follow-up.
It's a whole session. Yeah. Because
I'm so proud of you.
Carey, thank you. I'm proud of you too.
Your
You're
private
amazing.
practice is booming. You're on multiple national TV shows. I mean, look, I could be your agent because I'm like such a fan, and I know but I'm proud of you for stepping into this space. And where can people find out more? I know that you're on different social media now, not just Facebook.
Not just I'm on all platforms. From
Listen,
the TikTok
old guy in the Facebook thing.
That's how I feel. It's such a learning experience. I'm way behind, but I'm trying my best, and that's the growth. Instagram, TikToks, LinkedIn's. I'm doing Blue Sky, which I just learned about. I'm on it all, Carey. But I have a website.
Give the website.
Yes, website is www.jamespkelleher.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you watching and listening. This is the Next Chapter podcast. I'm Carey Peña.